Hey guys, it's Marquis here with another episode of Marqui-Talks Black. Um, this is another episode where I address a user question. Now, I did have a point that I said I wouldn't feed the trolls. I know, making a YouTube channel about race, you're going to attract a certain type of people. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, but generally this was kind of I won't say a bad question, but it was erring a little bit on the side of trolling. So I wasn't really sure whether or not to ignore it, but I figured I guess I should address it. The user sent me the following question. He said, Marquis, why is it that black people are always talking about justice? Justice for Trayvon, justice for Mike Brown, justice for Ferguson, justice for McKinney, but yet they weren't raising any fuss when O.J. Simpson killed his wife. Doesn't that make you hypocrites? Now, in order to address that, I think this is a perfect time for a little bit of education. I think a lot of people don't realize just how bad things were back in the day, and by back in the day, I mean mid 60s and before, and anything from the mid 60s back. um I was too young. I was very young when the whole OJ Simpson thing happened. I know a lot of people were watching TV at the time. Honestly, I don't remember caring, not because I didn't care about this situation, but because I was a child. I'm talking probably 6 or 7. I don't really remember what year the OJ Simpson thing did happen, but I was a kid, and I remember people being glued to the TV, and I just didn't really care. I saw, a white truck driving very slowly, and I didn't really understand what was happening. But in retrospect, is it a similar situation to the Trayvon Martin case, in that someone who was almost very blatantly guilty got away? Yes and no. Yes, in that, in the basic sense, like people were saying, someone who was very guilty or very likely guilty got away. Um, no, in the sense that it was neither preceded by nor followed by acts of violence that were similar with the same result. Now, what I mean by that is, um, how can I put this? All right, this is the way it was you know presented to me. I spoke to a good friend of mine. She's a little bit older. She's like 5 years older than me, so she remembers the whole hip thing. And she's also black. And I was talking to her, and I said, hey, a lot of people pose this question, or they brought up this question. Isn't this similar to the O.J. Simpson case? The whole Trayvon Martin thing. Does this make us hypocrites? And I even asked her, how did she feel about it? About the whole O.J. Simpson case and the verdict and everything else. And her response was, good. I was like, good. I don't. What do you mean by good? Could you elaborate? She said honestly, I didn't care. I didn't give much of a fuck that Nicole Simpson was killed. And a lot of people are going to jump on that and say that makes her a terrible person. But just hear me out as far as her explanation. She said good because for decades people have been doing shit to us and getting away with it. So this was sort of, I won't say retribution, but a sort of tipping of the scales, I guess. And I think that's something that was kind of echoed with a lot of older black people, at least a lot of older black people that I talked to about the situation, was that they were borderline indifferent, not saying anyone justified the killing of this woman, not saying anyone felt as though her death was right, in any sense, but that a lot of people felt as though, given the large scale injustices, that were carried out against black people and and other ethnicities up to that point, that it was kind of like a "I got you back" kind of thing. When someone does something to you, even if it's not right, even if you're supposed to turn the other cheek, generally it feels good to kind of get them back, just meet them on their same level kind of thing. I think that's where a lot of people were coming from. It's very immature, yes, but if you understand the history behind it, then you'll probably know why. For well, I guess actually probably hundreds of years, really. You think about okay, let's put it this way. Ever since Abraham Lincoln, declared that slavery was illegal and there could be no more slaves, with the Emancipation Proclamation. Once he pretty much said, black Americans are, black Americans, that they are citizens, that they're not property. I would say from that point up until the mid 60s, justice was a little bit one-sided in the United States, and some people are going to say that it still is, but I'm just talking about that time period in particular. Now, what I mean by that is you could do whatever you wanted to a black person, and nothing would happen to you in a legal sense. Now, what does that mean? There were widespread lynchings, killings, beatings, raping, or just outright murder of black people, especially in the South, and nothing would happen. Nothing would come of it, even if they were brought to trial, which they usually were. It would be a trial with all white jury, and they would dismiss it. They would dismiss it on the grounds maybe of not enough evidence or whatever else. But generally, I think that's very dangerous because it sends a message to people. I think it sends a couple messages, really. One, to black people, it sends a message that your lives don't matter. Your lives are literally moot. Like, it doesn't matter if someone kills you, it doesn't matter if someone harms you. Your own existence does not matter. And that's a very dangerous message to send to people, because it affects how they feel about themselves and how they feel about, I guess the country as a whole. It sends the message to white people, at least during that time period, that they were still superior, and that black people were still animals or still less than human, because it really didn't matter what you did to them. They just didn't matter. And I think that also feeds into it, because if you tell someone that if they rob a bank, nothing's going to happen to them, what are they going to do? I'm not saying that it's going to make them run out, and immediately rob a bank, but it will certainly embolden certain people who would not have acted, otherwise to do so. So I think that's what happened a lot of times. And then also, I believe that the third effect of that is, once you continuously tell someone that their life isn't worthwhile, they either start to accept that, internally, they start to believe it themselves, and they start to suffer from self-hate, and they see themselves as lesser, or they rebel against that concept and become angry. And either one of those is really not something that you want. And really, I think it's kind of sending a similar message even today, starting with the Trayvon case as the first precedent, and then everything else afterwards, where these crimes were against predominantly black people, and then, be it like a white police officer or whatever was getting away with it. It was kind of giving a very similar message to the old style 60s message of you don't matter, your lives don't matter. And I think that, it's a very dangerous message. But circling back, because I feel like I got a little bit off track here. Like I said, for decades, you could literally do whatever you wanted to black people, and that was it. Like, what are you going to do about it? It was kind of a literally, what are you going to do about it situation, where someone would harm you or your family member, might even kill you, might even rape you, or rape your sister, and then that's it. Like, you just go home and you just fester with that anger, with that resentment, because there's literally nothing you can do about it legally. And I think that's the position a lot of people were placed in, at least back then, because legally, they weren't being represented properly. Um, so how that parallels to the Nicole Simpson thing is that a lot of people felt like this was kind of like payback, you know? It was kind of like, we got you. We got you. You know what I mean? Not, like I said, not that it was right that she died, but certainly that people kind of felt as though justice had been balanced. Not that justice had been served, because justice hadn't been served if someone who murdered someone got away with that murder, but I would say that they felt as though justice had been balanced in the fact that they said, you see, we can get away with shit too. You know, it's I don't know, it's very complicated. Obviously, this whole thing is complicated. Otherwise, I wouldn't need to sit here and make videos about it. But yeah, the general point is that the consensus I got from a lot of older black people was that they they did not care, or that they felt as though it was the sort of equaling, like a balancing. Yes, Nicole Simpson died, and that was terrible. A lot of people believe her husband, Orenthal James Simpson, did it. A lot of the evidence pointed towards that fact, and then he got away with it. Yes, very similar to the Trayvon Martin case. Not similar, however, in the fact that there was no history of black people getting away with crimes against white people, or harming them or doing anything to them, you know, and it certainly wasn't preceded, I would say. It wasn't preceded, and it certainly wasn't followed by any large scale wave of violence against white people that was non-convicted. So I think that's a major difference. And people, you're going to say, how is it different? How is it different that this murderer, who was black, got away with it, and then this murderer who was not even white, because he wasn't white. The man who killed Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman, wasn't a white man. But he wasn't white, and they say, well, how is that different? Because I think that it made white people feel how we felt for a moment. That sense of powerlessness, that sense of legal powerlessness, like something bad happened to you, and there's nothing you can do about it. There is nothing you can do about it. That's a feeling that I think a lot of black people have carried with them for decades. That's the powerlessness, and just seeing that happen to people who had never felt it before, sort of like a humbling effect, I think. As a whole, a lot of black people were just like, yeah, good, good. Not necessarily glad that the woman died, but glad that it brought about the humbling effect, basically. So like I said, that's the basic history of it, and I think that since this whole thing is about understanding anyway, people should really try and understand, how black people felt, or how black people feel about it. That same frustration that a lot of white people had the day when he got away with it is the same thing that a lot of black people were living with for decades, and in multiple instances, multiple cases. It was just like, well, there's nothing we can do about it. There's not enough evidence, even though things were pretty blatantly guilty. But all right, guys, that was the episode. As always, send me any emails to the email I provided below. Let me know what you think. Let me know if I'm doing a good job, and if there are any topics you want me to discuss, please send those as well. All right, see ya.